We continue now at the top of Daf Ches Amud Aleph and Meseches Shevuos. This is Shevuos Daf 28a. On the previous Amud, Rava said if a person takes a Shevuah not to eat a kikar, not to eat a particular loaf, so as long as one kazayas is still left, he hasn't eaten the entire thing, so he can still go to a Chacham and undo that Shevuah. But the Gemara asked what exactly is the case. If the way the person said the Shevuah was that he's not going to eat it shelo ochel, so that means he's not going to eat a kazayas, so once he ate that first kazayas, the Shevuah should be over, he should not be able to go to the Chacham. And if you're going to say that the case is he said Shevuah shelo ochalna, which means he's not going to eat the entire thing, so why does there have to be a kazayas remaining? Even if the smallest amount remains, still it's not over, and he should be able to go to the Chacham to undo that Shevuah. As the Gemara says, afilu kol shu nami, even if the smallest amount is left over. Rashi explains, afilu kol shu shehu shiur nami ma'akev shelo avar al Shevuos. So again, if he said ochalna, that he's not going to eat the entire thing, even if the smallest amount is left, so then again he has not yet transgressed the Shevuah, v'roy l'she'ela, and it should still be fit to do she'ela, to ask a Chacham, to ask a Bezin, and undo that Shevuah. And so again, where would there be a case where it goes by the kazayas remaining, as long as there's a kazayas remaining, that we would say that's the point where he can ask, when he can do she'ela and ask a Chacham. And the Gemara says, if you want, I could say that Rava was talking with shelo ochel, which again means he's not going to eat a kazayas. And if you want, I could also say shelo ochalna, that the case is that I'm not going to eat the entire thing, and we can explain it either way. And the reasoning is as follows. If you want, I could say that the case is again shelo ochel, that he's not going to eat, which generally means a kazayas. But the reason why he can still ask, migo de mahanyele she'ela kazayas basra, since the she'ela is going to work on the last kazayas, we'll see Rashi in a moment, Mahanyele she'ela nami kazayas kama, so the she'ela works on the whole thing, even on that first kazayas, but you still need a kazayas remaining. Rashi explains, Migo de mahanya she'ela, to haki ochle lekazayas kama, because when he eats that first kazayas, adayin kol zeisim shaba asur nalav, it's not like the isser goes away. Every kazayas that he eats is going to be another isser. Umahanya lehu she'ela, and the she'ela will work to undo the Shevuah with regards to those kazaysim. V'keivan denishal, now once he asks a Chacham, v'kaimalon Chacham oker neder meikaro, and we've established that a Chacham undoes the neder from the beginning. V'shtakach to lo have a shem Shevuah klal, it comes out it wasn't a Shevuah at all. Hilkach kazayas kama shtakach to below isura achle. It actually goes essentially retroactively that first kazayas also it comes out that it was not eaten in a forbidden manner. And the Gemara continues, and if you want, I could say shelo ochalna, that the case is again that I'm not going to eat the entire thing. That's what he said. But ishayer kazayas, but if a kazayas is still remaining, so chashuv, that's important enough, lis shulei Allah, to ask about that, to ask a chacham and undo it. V'ilo lo chashuv lis shulei Allah, but if it's not even a kazayas, if it's a tiny amount remaining, that is not considered important enough that he would be able to do she'ela. And the Gemara continues, Meisvei, we have a question on Rava from the following brisa. This brisa was just mentioned earlier. Mishanodar shtei naziros. Let's say a person takes an oath upon himself for 2 naziros. Umana rishon, he counts the first naziros. Vehifresh ala karban, and he separates a karban. V'achar kach nishal al harishon, and then he goes ahead and asks a chacham, he undoes that first naziros. So also lo shniya b'rishona, that naziros that he kept, that it actually counts for his second naziros. Really, he would have had to keep, again, as we said, a first Nazirus and then subsequently another Nazirus. But now that he undid the first Nazirus, so the second Nazirus that he took upon himself, it's as if he already kept that Nazirus that first time. And Rashi explains the question, V'yachar kach nishal al rishon, again, then he asks and he undoes that first Nazirus, Alma afagav da'ozlo lakula. We see from here that even though that entire Nazirus is over, he finished the entire first Nazirus, nishal aleh, he's still able to do she'ela. He's still able to ask and undo it. And again, that goes against Rava, because Rava said you can only undo the Shevuah if some of that loaf is remaining. But once he eats the entire loaf, it sounds like you would not be able to undo that Shevuah. So why over here, when that entire Nazirus was already counted, it seems that he's able to undo it? And the Gemara answers, Hacha b'mayaskin, and here what are we talking? B'shalo kiper. Although he did keep the entire Nazirus, but he hasn't actually brought the kapara, he hasn't actually brought the carbon, and so therefore it's not really over, that's why it can still be undone. But the Gemara asks, Vatanya, but we learned a brisa with a slightly different version, that it says kiper, that it says actually he did bring the kapara. Apparently, even in that situation, he can undo the nazirus. But the Gemara says there's another step that he didn't do. B'shalo gilach, he didn't shave. That's one of these steps also when it comes to nazirus. Rashi says, shalo gilach pesach ol moed as rosh nizro. He didn't shave at the entrance of the ol moed. It says he has to be megalech rosh nizro, his head. And so therefore, if he didn't do that shaving, again, it's not totally over. He can still undo it. As the Gemara continues and explains, Rabbi Eliezer, this would follow Rabbi Eliezer. Rabbi Eliezer says that shaving is ma'akev. Rashi explains, Rabbi Eliezer b'Meseches Naziris. Rabbi Eliezer can be found in Meseches Nazir. Tegalachas ma'achva lishtos yayin. The person has to shave in order to be able to drink wine again. V'litame l'meisim, in order to be tamei meis. Hilkach have shir. Therefore, again, that's considered something that's still remaining, and that's why it can still be undone. But the Gemara still asks, V'hatanya, but we learned in a brisa gilach, even in a situation where he shaved, he can still undo the Nazirus. So again, we're back to our question. It seems like even in situations where that first Nazirus is totally complete, he's still able to undo it through the process of she'ela. And so the Gemara instead answers, Amar Ravashi. Ravashi says, Nazirus karamis. Are you asking a question from Nazirus? Mi garam l'shniya shelo tachel. What is causing the second Nazirus not to take effect? Meaning the whole idea over here is that the second Nazirus is replacing. It's as if he kept the second Nazirus in that first Nazirus. What's causing that to happen? Meaning to say, or another way to say it is, what's causing that he has to now keep the second Nazirus and that first Nazirus doesn't count for the second one? It's the Rishona. It's that first Nazirus. The first Nazirus is holding back and saying that that first Nazirus that he kept counts towards the first one, and now he still has to keep a second one. Vienna, and so now it is no longer, and therefore once it's no longer, the second one will take that place. Rashi explains. Amar Ravashi says, Nazirus karamis, you're asking a question from Nazirus. Liola misha avar al Shevuos. So really, in a normal case of Shevuah, once the person fully transgressed the Shevuah, lo chazia l'she'ela, it's not possible to do she'ela. V'lo mahanya lo she'ela, and you can't do she'ela, you can't undo it. U'dekasha loch Nazirus, and your question from Nazirus, lav koshi, it's not a question. And Rashi continues, Migoram l'shniya shelo tachel, what causes that the second one doesn't take effect? Kilomar, what the Gemara means to say is as follows. Migoram loch lomar shahayomim hamenuyim, what causes you to say that those first days that he kept as a Nazir, lo l'shniya nimnu, they don't count towards the second Nazirus, ela l'rishona, they count towards the first instead. The tema that you should say, ozlo la rishona, that the first one, it goes away, v'tikshi loch, and then you're going to ask this question. Rishona haisa go remes loch lomar kain, it's the first one that causes you to say that. Ve'ena, and it is no longer. Meaning the Chacham has now told us that the person's regret is considered a regret. And it undoes that first Nazirus. And then it comes out that the person really ended up keeping a second Nazirus. Therefore, the entire first Nazirus is still around when this question is being asked. What Rashi is saying is that this first Nazirus, even though he kept the entire Nazirus, why is he able to ask a Chacham and undo that Nazirus? The reason why he's able to do that is because the second Nazirus is still hanging around, and we're asking the question whether that second Nazirus has already been taken care of, or if he still needs to take care of that second Nazirus. And therefore, since that question is still an outstanding question, therefore the first Nazirus is still considered not to be complete. One is still able to undo that Nazirus, because by undoing that Nazirus, we will now say that which he kept is going to go towards the second Nazirus instead. That's why even though he's kept the entire first Nazirus, he still has the opportunity for she'ela to undo that Nazirus. Aval kikar shenishba lev yachla, but when it comes to a loaf, which he took a shvu and ate it all, so he ate the entire thing, al karchach avar la shvuaso, so you have to say there that the shvu is already finished. V'shuvein la she'ela, and the opportunity for she'ela is no longer. And the Gemara continues with another opinion. Ameimar Omar, Ameimar says, Afilu achla kula, even if a person ate the entire loaf, nishal oleh, still there's an opportunity for she'ela, he can undo that shvua. And Ameimar continues and explains, I b'shogeg, the reason is because if he ate it by mistake, mechusar carbon, so he's still missing a carbon still has to be brought, so it's still considered outstanding, so to speak, and therefore he's able to undo it. And I b'mezid, if he ate it on purpose, mechusar malchus, he's still missing malchus, he's still awaiting a punishment of malchus, so again, it's still considered not complete, and therefore, again, it is possible to do she'ela to undo that shvua. Avol kafsu ala amud lo. However, Amemar says, if he's tied up on the pillar, he's ready already to get malchus. At that point in time, it's too late. He's no longer able to do she'ela at that point in time. Kiddush Shmuel, like Shmuel says, the Yamar Shmuel, because Shmuel says, kafsu ala amud v'rotz mi bezdin pater. Once he's tied up, ready to get the malchus, let's say at that point in time, he runs away from the court. He's already exempt from malchus, and the Gemara right now is understanding it's as if the malchus has been given, therefore it's too late. But the Gemara says velohi, that's actually not true, because Hasam Rutz, over there he ran away. When he runs away, the idea is it's considered a disgrace, and the disgrace itself is considered like the punishment is as if he got the malchus. But over here, lo Rutz, just because he's tied up, but if he hasn't run away yet, that's not considered that the malchus is complete, and therefore again in that situation he would be able to do she'ela. And the Gemara continues, Amar Rava says, Shvuah shelo ochel kikar zu, if a person takes a shvuah, an oath, that he's not going to eat this kikar, im ochel zu, if he eats this kikar, a second loaf, v'yochel es harishona b'shogeg v'hashniya b'mezid, and he eats the first one by mistake, and then he eats the second one on purpose, so pater, so in this case he's going to be exempt, we'll see Rashi in a moment. Rishona b'mezid, let's say he eats the first one on purpose, ushniya b'shogeg, and eats the second one by mistake, chayiv, then he's going to be liable, and shtehen b'shogeg, if he eats both of them b'shogeg, both of them by mistake, potter, then he's going to be potter. And Rashi explains, Amar Rava says, Shvuah shelo ochel kikar zu im ochel zu. He takes a shvuah again, that he's not going to eat this kikar if he eats the other kikar. Nimtzas ha'achas iser. So Rashi explains that it comes out here that one of them is iser, meaning one of them is the actual shvuah. He's not going to eat this particular loaf. V'ha'achas tanai, and then the other one is a condition, meaning to say, he's saying a condition. If I eat this one, then this other one is going to be aser. So zu shenishba aleh have iser, the one that he's taking the oath over, that's the one that we're calling the iser. V'zu sheyislaba, and the one that it's dependent upon, have tanai, that's the condition. So essentially there are two loaves over here. One is the iser, that's the one he took the shavua upon, and one is the tanai. And Rashi explains, Vashmi'in and Rav is teaching us as follows. Anytime you take a shvuah on a condition, and again he makes it dependent upon the other loaf, let's say, the chiddush over here is that the prohibition of the shvuah does not actually take effect at the moment that he made the shvuah, rather it's at the time of the first action that he takes. When he first goes ahead and eats a kikar, that's when the shvuah takes effect. Hilkach, therefore, therefore it's that moment that is the moment of shvuah, that's the moment of oath. So therefore, if at that moment, again, that's the first time he's taking action, zocher es shvuaso, if at that moment he remembers his shvuah, karinon be ha'adam b'shvuah, then we call it ha'adam b'shvuah. The person is involved in a shvuah. It's not like an onus, it's something that now he's aware of. V'chala olav shvuah l'hischayev karbon al hashogeg, and then the shvuah will take effect, and he's going to be liable to a carbon if it's by mistake. Bein sha'achal hatanai rishon, bein sha'achal ha'isser rishon. And Rashi says importantly over here that it actually does not matter if you eat the condition one first or if you eat the isser first. Uvilvad shetehei shgaga ba'achilas ha'isser. It just has to be that at the time you eat the isser, that's when there is shogeg. If there's shogeg when you eat the isser, that's when there's going to be a carbon. Umalkas al hamezid. And again, if you eat that isser b'mezid, so then there is going to be malchus. Uvilvad shetei hasra ba'achilas ha'isser, as long as there's a warning at the time that he eats the isser. Vim kvar shachach shvuaso b'shas ma'isa rishon. And the point over here is that if he forgot about his oath at the time that he does that first action, lo karinan be ha'adam b'shvuah, then it's not even ha'adam b'shvuah. He's like not even a person because he wasn't even aware at that time. V'yein ha'shvuah chala olav, and then the shvuah will not take effect at all. Lo lekarbon v'lo lemalchus, not for carbon or malchus. U'maisina le'siyata lekamon mimasnisin d'nedarim. Further on in the Gemara, we're going to bring a proof to all of this from the Mishnah in Nedarim. And so then the Gemara said, Achal es rishona, again, he eats the first one. Hahi ditnai kari rishona. Rashi says again, the conditional one, that's the one that's being called first. Shekach haisa seder shvuah. That's simply because that was the order of how he phrased it when he made the shvuah. He said, Im ochelzu, if I eat this one, that's the condition. Lo ochelzu, then I will not eat this one, that's the isser. Rashi says, again, importantly, that when it says over here he's eating the conditional one first, it is not because if he does the reverse, it's not going to take effect. It actually doesn't matter which one he does first. It certainly will take effect, and he'll be chayiv retroactively. Once he fulfills the condition, he's going to be chayiv. The only reason the Gemara is presenting it in this order is because we want to give a case where the first one is b'mezid and the second one is b'shogeg and chayiv karban, that then you'll be chayiv a karban. V'davka dehach shniya de isru. In that situation, it has to be that the second one is the isser. Dehavale shgaga b'achilas isser, because then you have a mistake by the eating of the isser. The ibetnai, because if you had a shgaga by the tanai, lo maisi karban al achilas so isser lemafreya shahais amazing. You're not going to bring a karban then on the first one that you ate b'mezid. Let's say you ate the isser b'mezid, because that was b'mezid. Uveheter, and that was still beheter at that time. Shadayin lo nesrala, because it still wasn't forbidden. V'yava bishu shogeg b'shas achila achron. Now, even though he was shogeg when he ate the second one, shu over ba'al hashvua lemafreya, which is causing him to transgress the shvua retroactively, shgaga be'isser b'inan. You need to have the shgaga by the isser, and that's why we're presenting it specifically in this order. And so Rashi continues, Achal esarishona b'shogeg ushniya b'mezid pater. Let's say he eats the first one b'shogeg, again that's the conditional one b'shogeg, and the second one b'mezid, he'd actually be totally pater. B'shas achila rishona, the point is, in this situation, at the time of his first action, his first eating, kvar shachach b'shvuah, so he already forgot his shvuah. Ukashachal ha'isr hayazachar shvuah, so now at the time he's eating the one that's forbidden, he remembers his shvuah. V'yavar aleh b'mezid, and so he's transgressing on purpose. Pater mimalkas, but he's still going to be pater from malchus. V'afilu b'asrei, even if he's warned. L'fisha lo chala shvuah Allah, because in this case the shvuah never takes effect. Sharei b'shas achila rishona shahaisa shvuah ru'uya lachol, because at the time of the first eating, when the shvuah is ready to take effect, kvar shachoach, it was forgotten. V'lo karina be ha'adam b'shvuah, it's not called ha'adam b'shvuah. V'chol shekein mikarban, and certainly he'll be pater from a karban, she'ein karban al hamezid, because you're not going to bring a karban in a situation of mezid. Now, Rishona b'mezid, let's say the first one was b'mezid, Ushniya b'shogeg, and the second one is b'shogeg, so chayiv, so then the person's going to be chayiv to bring a karban. Kesha'achal hatnai rishon, hayazachar es shvuah, so this case is when he ate the conditional one, he remembers his shvuah, v'yachlo b'mezid, he eats it on purpose, so he satisfies the condition. Uveheter gomer, he's totally allowed to eat it, because again it's just conditional. Sharei lo olav nishba, because the shvuah was not in this one. V'yachila rishona b'mezid, therefore that is a first eating b'mezid. Ukesha'achal b'shniya es ha'isr, and so when he eats the second one, when he eats that one, achlo behelim shvua, and let's say he eats it, and there's a lapse of awareness of the shvua, chayiv karban, he's now going to be chayiv a karban. Holu v'achila rishona zachar hu es shvua, so since in the first achila, he remembers his shvua. V'yodeya sheb'achila zu oser olav es hashniya, he knows that by eating this, he creates the isra on the second one. Ha'adam b'shvua karina be, that's called adam b'shvua. V'chala olav shvua, and therefore the shvua takes effect. Ukasha'achal shniya shogeg, and so when he eats the second one b'shogeg, harei over al shvua, so shogeg v'chayiv karban. When he transgresses his shvuah b'shogeg and he's chayiv a karban, and then the Gemara said shtein b'shogeg pater. Let's say they're both eaten b'shogeg pater, and Rashi says bein shachal hatanai rishon. It doesn't matter what order, whether he eats the first one, the first one that he eats is the conditional one. Bein shachal ha'isser rishon, or whether he eats the isser first. Pater is going to be pater. Kidefarishis, as I explained. Sharei ba'achila rishona haisa shvuah ru'uya lachol, because again it goes by the first eating. At that time is when the shvuah is supposed to be chal. Uviosa shah haya shachoach. At that time it was forgotten. V'lo chala olav hashvuah less or hashniya olav, and therefore the shvuah does not take effect in order to prohibit the second one upon him. And we will continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Ches Amud Beis.